name that? Who's that Rhodes Scholar name? Where did that term come from?
That's the Cecil Rhodes family,
Cecil
right?
Rhodes. Yeah. Right. Who was Cecil Rhodes?
He's a financier, banker, rapist. I mean,
Cecil Rhodes founded De Beers Diamonds, which controlled over 75% of the world's diamonds today. He also founded Council on Foreign Relations, which Obama's wife, Michelle, is a part of the Chicago branch, Council on Foreign Relations. This organization controls the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, De Beers Diamonds went to India. But before they went to India, let me back up a little bit. He's also linked in, Cecil Rhodes also linked into a guy who was his professor, who believed that the elitists should run the world and one person should run the world. Okay? Now, they were linked into the British and the British East Indian group, which when the British went over to India and got the Indians, took them over to South Africa. That's why you got a lot of Indians in South Africa, did a lot of mining. Who was one of those Indians? Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi did not like Africans.
Yeah.
He was a racist. And he was a civil rights lawyer, attorney. You knew that.
Yeah.
Now, what did he practice? What did Mahatma Gandhi practice? Nonviolence.
Nonviolence, yeah.
Who else practiced nonviolence?
Dr. King.
Exactly. So Dr. King was practicing something that a racist practiced, who also was a Marxist.
Yeah.
What did Karl Marx? Karl Marx said there are two things that can bring in communism. One through a violent way, and the other through a
nonviolent way.
So this is the influence of some of our movements that a lot of people had no idea how far the rabbit hole would go. Right. But I'm gonna show you today. Bam! First of all, I want to give thank you to Bamboo Entertainment, Brother M Hotel. I appreciate you bringing me here, man.
Thank you.
We're gonna do and make it do what it do, baby. This is what the title list is: you're either free or you're a slave. There is no in between. There is no middle. Just like the brother H. Rap Brown was talked about in the 60s, there's no in between. You're either free or you're a slave. And so today, if y'all don't know, you're gonna make a decision. What constitutes freedom? Here's the definition. What we're going to do is we're going to go over legalese, the legal terminologies, and some of the common terminology. But the legal terminology is more important because these are the things that govern our bodies and our movement, as well as the laws of nature. They're basically two laws that I follow. I only follow one law, but I'm governed by basically two in reality. I don't live my life according to their laws. Liberty, the right to do what is not forbidden by law. Freedom does not preclude the idea of subjection to law. Indeed, it presupposes the existence of some legislative provision. All right? Am I pronouncing that right? Presupposes?
Yeah, that's
presupposes
right.
the existence of some legislative provision. And this stuff that's highlighted, you might want to write it down and keep. Just take a note of it, because we're going to call this stuff back in. The observations of which ensures freedom to us by securing the like observance from others. And this is from the Bouvier's Law Dictionary, which is what the Supreme Court system uses. And I got it on, I have a disc too, I sell with that in 2 gig of information. The Bouvier on mine. It's an important book to have when you're doing cross references. Here's another definition from the Black's Law definition. Not subject to legal constraint of another. Constraint means to restrict. And also, if you look up the word district, it means the king's hold. If you ever look it up, that's when it goes back to the English. Unconstrained, having power to follow the dictates of his own will. Not being subjected by nobody and having your own power to do what you want to do. Not subject to the dominion of another. Not compelled to involuntary servitude, used in a sense as opposed to slaves. Alright? Freedom. Now here's power. The right, ability, authority, or faculty of doing something. You have that ability. That is what your power is. And it is defined in their law for you. Authority to do an act which the grantor might himself lawfully perform. The power is an ability on the part of a person to produce the change in a given legal relation by doing or not doing in a given act. So you can change. It's telling you, you have the ability to change what it is you want to do. Keep that in mind. Keep all of this shit in mind. And what constitutes slavery? First, let's look at the definition of slave. According to the law, a person who is wholly subject to the will of another. And basically, this is basically the opposite of the term freedom. One who has the freedom of an action, but whose person and services are wholly under control of another. What does that sound like? It's a job.
Yeah,
Let me tell you something about slavery. Slavery, in some aspects, I'm not gonna say like it's good, but you got the you had the two terms. You had the indentured servant, and you had what they call the chattel slavery. Slavery has always been around because somebody had to do the work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Somebody had to do the work. One who is the power of the master and who belongs to him, so that the master may sell and dispose of him, of his person, of his industry, and his labor without doing anything about it. So basically you have no authority as being a slave. And here's some longer terminology. But I want you to check out this one here. It says a slave is a man who is by law deprived of his liberty for life and becomes property of another. Deprived of your liberty and becomes the property of another. And this goes into your inus legis or your hominid sapiens, or your what they call the straw man today. A slave has no political rights. Dred Scott versus Taney. You have no rights, slave. No civil rights. Now we know what civil rights are. Civil rights are for U.S. citizens. How do you become a U.S. citizen? We'll get into later, but you basically become a U.S. citizen by going over and having contracts or giving up or receiving privileges and immunities from the corporation called the United States. That is how you become a U.S. citizen. Right? Saying, hey, I want to be a U.S. citizen. Well, I signed that. Then you get civil rights. Now, we had a brother who had civil rights movements, was basically sending a whole bunch of us back into slavery, but he didn't know. He didn't know. Slavery is also a personal estate, a thing, and not a person. Manumission. If you ever seen a brother named Messiah Bay, he's basically the first one I've seen mention manumission, and it's basically how you can get free. It's basically a freeing process with manumission. You look it up in the law dictionary. Deed or writings which must be made according to the laws of the state. And I got here in yellow when he talked about a thing and not a person is res. Res is the subject matter. Your rights. Res is a thing, and it's a vessel. But in law, when you go to court, you become that res. If you get beat, you are that booty, you are that prize. You are the captured vessel. That's the admiralty and maritime law, the law of the sea, which they basically covered the land with in order to do the laws and get away with the crooked shit they're getting away with. Declaration is one aspect of getting free. Now, who is your master? That's divine master. Because you know what I noticed? A lot of people talked about slaves and freedom, but nobody ever really defined who the master was. Well, here it is. A principal who employs another to perform service in his affair and who controls or has a right to control physical conduct of another in performances of services. By law, the definition, that's what master is. Now, when you get into principle, that's going to go into when we get to talk about fiduciary relationships. You familiar with these terms? All right, fiduciary is just like a third party, somebody acting on behalf of you. Fiduciary and principal, so that means somebody has to be the principal, the fiduciary relationship, and then there's an agent, and then there's basically a slave that everybody basically controlling. And then there's a master and servant relationship. The relation of a master and servant exists where one person, for pay or other valuable consideration, enters into a service of another and devotes. See, this don't sound like, you know, I get to beat you on a slave ship and you get to rape the babies and all that stuff. It's just basically saying, you're going to work. That's the master-servant relationship. They got chips inside the computers called a master and a slave.
Yep.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that all of this comes from self. Without self, there's nothing. Everything outside of self that has been built by man is a reflection of self. And self is a reflection of all the bodies above us. We all composed of the same element.